In this video, we're looking at UFC Vegas 88. I'm going to give you my full card predictions for each one of these fights. Let's make some money this week. At the top of the slate, we have top 10 heavyweights ready to throw down this week. Both guys looking to get back on track, more so for Bam Bam Tuivasa. He is 0-3 in his last 3 fights, brutally knocked out in each of them. Ciryl Gane butchered him to every level and finished him in the 3rd round. Sergey Pavlovich runs through him in under a minute. And Alexander Volkov made it look easy against him, especially when the fight hit the ground. Now against Alexander Volkov, he had no answer for the range. He was a sitting duck right in front of a longer, taller guy. And he was getting picked apart and landing at a very low clip. And against Sergey Pavlovich, it was power versus power. Sergey Pavlovich had a little bit more, the hands were a bit faster, and he got home first. It happens. Now against Ciryl Gane, Tai Tuivasa did land his shot, the shot that normally puts guys away. You don't see Tai Tuivasa really knocking guys down and them getting back up. So he landed the shot that he needed, but outside of that, that fight against Ciryl Gane was pretty one-sided. Gane was just too sharp. The volume was too high, the attack was too diverse with the body kicks, the punches, the elbows. He just looked overloaded and overwhelmed. But the benefit for him is that he doesn't really need to worry about those things this week because Marcin Tybura is not much taller, much longer than him. He's not much faster than him. He's not as flowy and as technical as Ciryl Gane. Tybura is a generalist who doesn't do anything at an elite level, but he's solid enough everywhere to have carved out a nice spot for himself in the division. And he's done it for a long time now at 38 years old. You just wonder how much longer he can do that. You look at his last fight against Tom Aspinall, he was sat down with a straight punch immediately. Now we all know that Tom Aspinall is as good as it gets at heavyweight, so you can't really fault him for losing, but him getting knocked out in around a minute probably isn't the best thing for his durability. But what I like for Tybura in this fight is that when he's at his best, he's forcing guys to fight his fight. He likes to fight at a slow, controlled pace. When he does get the fight to the ground, he's got awesome ground and pound and overall a much better ground game than Tai Tuivasa. If Tybura can get him there, I think he's going to have a lot of success. And this fight is scheduled for 5 rounds, which I think favors Marcin Tybura here. I say that because he's steadier, obviously he's the much better grappler, and he throws teeps to the body that could start slowing down Tuivasa, who frankly has not tried to get in better shape. Tuivasa looks worse physically, just a little bit fight after fight. Like there are love handles and then there are unconditional love handles. And he's incredibly soft to the body, so I think if Marcin Tybura starts digging those toes into the body, stays steady, stays on his bike, gets outside of the 2nd round, I think he's going to start taking over. But we can't ignore the fact that Tai Tuivasa is a lot younger. He might have the hand speed advantage. He's got massive power in his hands as well, power that can land through the guard. Tybura could have his hands in the right place and shell up, but Tai Tuivasa has that power where even if he's landing on the forearm or landing on the glove, it's still going to rattle you behind it. So he can still hurt you with the hands. He's got those massive legs, so the big leg kicks are going to come. So I'm pretty torn here. Again, I think the 5 rounds favors Tybura, but they're in the apex in a smaller cage, and I think that's Tai Tuivasa's world. And Marcin Tybura is not the most durable guy in the world. He's lost 7 times in the UFC. 4 of those last 5 losses have been by knockout. And if you look at his fight against like Walt Harris, for example, Walt Harris is landing at will early on. Marcin Tybura is able to take him down because he's off balance when he crashed the distance, and that's what really led to the end of the fight. But if he kept his feet and stayed in a good sound position, stayed grounded, then he gets him out of there, and that's what I think Tai Tuivasa can do. Tybura really can take over a fight if a guy starts to gas in front of him or if a guy doesn't have a whole lot of punching power. I don't like the cardio coming from Tuivasa, but the power is second to none. Tuivasa doesn't throw a lot down the middle. It's a lot of winging punches, a lot of brawling, a lot of hooks, but Tybura does relinquish a lot of space. If you want to move forward on Marcin Tybura, he says, be my guest. He lets you do it. And I think that'd be a huge mistake here. I think if he finds himself up against the fence and is trying to block what's coming down the middle, then Bam Bam's just going to go right around the guard with one of those big hooks, maybe a combination of hooks, put him down, and he probably does it in the 1st round. So give me the younger man, give me the power, give me the bounce back spot. I'll take Tai Tuivasa to win this fight by knockout. Next, we're looking at a fight between Bryan Battle and Ange Loosa. If you've watched this channel for a while, you know we love us some Bryan Battle. He's got a great frame for welterweight, granite chin. I've been on record saying that he will end his career one day having never been knocked out. And Rinat Fakhretdinov did everything he could to make sure that didn't happen, but we're still here, baby. But there's just so much to like about Bryan Battle. He has a nose for finishing these fights. If you look at his last fight against AJ Fletcher, chewed up the body. He was using long body kicks at range, and then when they were in the clinch, he was throwing hard knees up the middle. Fletcher was having success and landing a lot of big shots, but again, Bryan Battle's got that granite chin, so he was able to fight through it. Once the fight hit the mat, Bryan Battle was dominating. Lots of ground and pound, found the back, sunk in a rear naked choke. Before that, he flatlined Gabe Green in 14 seconds. We saw him knock out Takashi Sato with a perfect head kick in under a minute. The man is dangerous wherever the fight takes place and whenever the fight takes place. He's one of those guys who I think is threatening a finish for all 15 minutes. And a lot of that comes from him keeping making his activity as high as anyone you're going to find in the division. Now on the other side, Ange Loosa is coming off of a war with Rhys McKee where it was a competitive fight. He was able to win with his wrestling, but even in the last minute, he was nearly finished. Rhys McKee was pouring it on, Loosa was gassed, and I think if there was another minute or two in that fight, it would have been over. Now Ange Loosa is a tough, hard-nosed guy, but my issue with him is that I think his approach is too basic. He throws a good 1-2, good low kicks, shoots for takedowns, which is all fine. The fundamentals can take you far, but it looks like it's really easy to game plan for. Look at last week, for example, with Michael Venom Page. He tore Kevin Holland up, and it was largely because Holland couldn't figure him out. I would assume a lot of that came from the lack of preparation, because who are you going to call in to do what Michael Venom Page does? You're not going to be able to find anybody, but in this case, Bryan Battle can look at anybody in his gym and say, just be Ange Loosa for a little while. It's not hard. Anybody around Loosa's size can emulate his fighting style and give Bryan Battle a really good look, which I think means that the preparation has been on point. So I expect Bryan Battle to not be surprised by anything that Ange Loosa throws his way, and I think that he runs away with this fight, staying busy with that back leg out of that orthodox stance, chopping away at the outside of Loosa's lead leg, throwing that teep to the body like a jab, mixing in powerful kicks upstairs. And not for nothing, Ange Loosa is among the most hittable fighters in the UFC today, so I see Bryan Battle taking full advantage of that, letting his strikes fly and setting traps with his footwork as well. I think that Bryan Battle's going to hurt him on the feet, force Loosa to shoot. He's going to end up getting to Ange Loosa's back, and he's going to sink in a rear naked choke. So the pick for me in this fight is Bryan Battle by submission. Next, we have an easy one at light heavyweight between Kennedy Nzechukwu and Ovince St. Preux. And Nzechukwu is around a -500 favorite right now, and he's a lock to get it done here. One of the biggest light heavyweights in the division's history, lots of power, decent grappling, has grown a lot since coming into the UFC. He is coming off of a loss to Dustin Jacoby, but there's no shame in that. Dustin Jacoby is very sharp, and he was just a better man that night. Happens. Going into that fight against Jacoby, he was on a 3-fight winning streak, finishing Carl Robertson, Iwan Kutelaba, and Devin Clark, so the momentum was there. And he's looking to recapture that momentum against OSP, who's just collecting hefty show money checks at this point. When you've been in the UFC for as long as OSP has, that show money is looking nice, and I know that the UFC is probably tired of paying this guy this kind of money. Now, as far as the fight goes, OSP is almost 41 years old. He just does not have it anymore. He gets tired pretty quickly. He was knocked out in his last 3 losses. His body is shot after all these years of competing at the highest level, coming off of a long football career. We don't need to go too deep here. You know my style. I'm not going to keep you here all day. Keep it tight for you, because I got respect for you. The pick is obvious. Kennedy Nzechukwu, bigger, younger, faster, stronger, better cardio. He should make it look easy this week. I think he wins in the first or second round. Give me Kennedy Nzechukwu by knockout. Next, we have the best fight on the card between Christian Rodriguez and Isaac Dulgarian. Dulgarian making his UFC debut last year, where he destroyed Francis Marshall in the first round. He cut through him like it was nothing, took him down right away, stayed heavy on top, landed nasty ground and pound, got him out of there. And that's what he does. His wrestling is no joke. He was a decorated wrestler before transitioning to MMA, and it's showing in these fights. No one's been able to stop his takedowns. He's very heavy on top. He sticks to guys like glue. Now on the other side, C-Rod is moving up to 145 after back-to-back weight misses at bantamweight. And it makes sense because he was bouncing around between bantamweight and featherweight earlier in his career, and you get older, your body fills out a bit more. At 26, he should be moving up to 145. It's the right choice. I also like that he's not going to be physically outmatched here. These guys are going to be basically the same size on fight night. Now, Christian Rodriguez does a lot of things well. The striking is very clean. The grappling is fantastic. We saw him have his way with Raul Rosas Jr. and Cameron Simon in his last 2 fights. Now, we picked him in both of those fights. We got him as an underdog against Rosas Jr., a big underdog at that, and then we got him as a slight favorite against Cameron Simon. And the reason why we picked him those nights is because of how well-rounded his skill set is. If you're somebody who is one-dimensional, or you're lacking in any one major area like striking, wrestling, grappling, cardio, or fight IQ, then C-Rod is going to expose you. Now, Isaac Dulgarian is a buzzsaw. He's undefeated, and again, his wrestling is a problem. And we've seen Christian Rodriguez taken down a lot in recent fights. I see Isaac Dulgarian being able to do the same thing. He's going to be able to get him down to the mat early. He's going to land that patented ground and pound that he's so famous for already. But there are still unknowns. What does Isaac Dulgarian look like after round 1? What happens if he gets stuck on the feet? How is he going to respond if C-Rod starts defending these takedowns with guillotine attempts? We saw him sink in a tight guillotine against JSP, one that I'm surprised he didn't tap from. If C-Rod ends up on top, what does Dulgarian's submission defense look like? Is he going to be able to stay safe on bottom? All of these question marks surrounding Isaac Dulgarian make C-Rod the better choice here in my opinion. This is his world, and I posted about this on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, go follow me. We're almost at 1,000 Twitter followers, or X followers. I'm an old head, so it's Twitter to me, but go follow me on Twitter. I'm at like 880. Try to get me up to 1,000, because then, you know, brands will be like, like, oh, here's some money. I'm looking for the Crocs sponsorship, you heard? But anyway, what I posted on Twitter is what we're talking about here. C-Rod is the spoiler. Raul Rosas Jr., tons of hype, undefeated, was a big favorite over C-Rod. The fight wasn't even close. And you could say, oh, Kunith, Raul Rosas Jr. took him down in the first round. I don't care. Raul Rosas Jr. landed 2 significant strikes over 15 minutes. Don't try to tell me the fight is close. Cameron Simon, tons of hype, undefeated. C-Rod beats him every round. Now we have Isaac Dulgarian, tons of hype, undefeated. You do the math. Christian Rodriguez is collecting shiny O's like Sonic the Hedgehog, and he has another chance to do it this week, and I think he does. I see him weathering an early storm, making Isaac Dulgarian work in the first round, taking over in the second round, and finding a finish. I think club and sub is on the table, but either way, give me Christian Rodriguez to get it done this week inside the distance. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, because when you know how the algorithm works. Next, we're looking at a rematch nearly 6 years in the making between Pannie Kianzad and Macy Chiasson. In their first fight, Chiasson dominated with her physicality. She spent most of the first round in the clinch, but got the club and sub in the second round. And since then, both of them have had their ups and downs in the UFC, so this is a great fight to make at both of their points in their careers. Now, we haven't seen Macy Chiasson fight in almost a year and a half. She lost the fight that she was winning cleanly because she got an up kick to the liver against Irene Aldana. Pretty embarrassing. But before that, she won a split decision over Norma Dumont, where she dominated with her wrestling like many of the fights she's had success in, and that's clearly the recipe for her this week if she wants to go up 2 on Sweden's Pannie Kianzad. Kianzad's also coming off of a loss. This one was a decision to Ketlin Vieira, where she had no answer for the wrestling or the ground game. She got wet blanketed for 3 rounds. Now, when she can keep the fight standing, that's when she has success, because she's tough, she's got good cardio, she's got good output, good boxing, but the grappling is where she has struggled and will continue to struggle. And that is where Macy Chiasson makes her money. So it is a clear mismatch from a grappling standpoint, and on the feet, I don't think that Pannie Kianzad has so much that she's going to say put Macy Chiasson out. Macy's going to be a lot bigger than her, so I think she's going to be able to control her pretty easily on the mat. So I think this is the perfect matchup for her, and I think she should be a bigger favorite than what she is. The line ain't wide enough. She's going to be 4 inches taller. She'll have a 6-inch reach advantage. She already is up 1-0 on this woman, and I don't think that she has to fear the offense coming back her way. Pannie Kianzad has no knockouts, no knockdowns, no finishes in the UFC, and fairly weak ground game compared to her opponent. So give me the size, the wrestling, give me Macy Chiasson to get it done this week by decision. Next, we have a fun one at middleweight with Gerald Meerschaert and Bryan Barberena, a striker versus grappler matchup. Bryan Barberena, a brawler who's as game as they come. From a technical standpoint, not great, but when the fight is dirty, that's when Bam Bam is at his best. And I could see him giving Gerald Meerschaert serious problems on the feet if he's able to close the distance and just make it ugly. And that's what most of the striking exchanges look like in a Gerald Meerschaert fight. Pretty damn ugly. And Gerald Meerschaert's stand-up has improved over the years, but his hands are still very slow and his head movement is He was able to avoid a lot of big shots coming from Andre Petrosky, but Petrosky is a grappler. When he does strike, he's loading up on everything, throwing wild strikes, and really just throwing one at a time. Dodging an overhand from Andre Petrosky is like dodging a football that somebody threw at you from 30 yards away. Like, you see it coming pretty clearly. And that's where I feel like Bryan Barberena could have a lot of success, because his strikes will be a bit cleaner than Petrosky's, and also he's not putting everything out there. He's just trying to touch you. He's got good volume, so if he's just putting punches out there, just touching, I think that he can get to Meerschaert this week and have a lot of success. Now, for Gerald Meerschaert, obviously, he's looking to get the fight down to his world. GM3 is a problem on the mat. He's number 2 all time in middleweight finishes, second to only Anderson Silva. And he has the most submission wins in UFC middleweight history by a pretty wide margin. The only person that might be able to catch him is Brendan Allen. But I see him adding to that tally this week because Bryan Barberena has historically very bad takedown defense. He was submitted in 2 of his last 3 fights, and frankly, he's not a middleweight. He's 6 feet tall, but he should be fighting at welterweight, but he's getting a bit older, and he looks just to be in bad shape at this weight class. His body has way too many miles on it, a rich history of back injuries, wars in the cage, tons of fights, tons of hours of training, and it's all just too much, and it's showing up in these performances. So despite being older, despite having more fights, I think that Gerald Meerschaert is the healthier, fresher guy here, and I think that he's going to win this fight. I see GM3 getting this fight to the mat, staying heavy on top, using a lot of downward pressure, being patient until he can find a way to wrap that neck neck up. He ties Anderson Silva for the most finishes in the division's history, and he picks up another submission, creating more of a gap between him and everybody else on the ground. Give me GM3 to win this fight by submission. And just a peek behind the curtain, GM3 is going to show up in the betting article this week. You can get that on KunithMMA.com with a total access package. That will give you the official betting article, the DFS strategy guide, the lineup optimizer, tools, data, access to the community forum where we hit a parlay at plus 272 last week. And the DFS tools were money in the bank on the site last week. I know a lot of you guys did well. I got some messages from you. Nice work. Again, all of that can be found on KunithMMA.com. That'll be linked in the description and a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Next, we have a fight with Mike Davis and Natan Levy. The inactivity coming from Mike Davis keeps him out of the forefront of the minds of many UFC fans, but let me tell you, this guy is as talented as they come at 155 pounds. Great wrestling, super athletic, can fight at a high pace for 3 rounds, has not taken a ton of damage, and he's been in there with better fighters, much higher level guys. Sadiq Youssef, for example, Gilbert Burns, Mason Jones, Vyacheslav Borshov, all better than Natan Levy. And Natan Levy is a decent striker, but he wants this fight on the mat. The problem is, anyone who wants to get him to the mat can do it. We saw Mike Breeden take him down 3 times, which is crazy. We saw Rafa Garcia take him down 7 times. He's only got a 41% takedown defense in the UFC, and he's coming off of a win over Geraldo Valdez, who doesn't belong in the promotion. That guy's 0-3. He'll be out of the UFC soon, but he faces a real test at lightweight now against somebody who can put him on his back, somebody who can make him work, somebody who knows how to win at the highest level. I expect Mike Davis to slice through him this week any way he wants to. If he wants to take him down, he can do that whenever he wants. If he wants to strike, he'll have success doing that because he has fast, sharp hands that can give him trouble. Just look at his striking in the Thomas Gifford fight. Just kidding, don't actually look at that fight. That's the worst fight in UFC history, and if you aren't familiar with that fight, the reason why it's bad is not for the reasons you would think. It's literally the worst beating I've ever seen anybody get in the UFC. It made me look away from the TV. It was fucking crazy. But anyway, I think Mike Davis can do it all. I don't think that Levy has much for him, and it's not that Natan Levy is bad, but he's not great anywhere. I don't see him winning fights at the UFC level against guys who can win consistently. So give me Mike Davis to win this fight any way he chooses. Either he knocks him out or wins a clean decision. I lean more so toward a decision because Natan Levy is tough, so give me Mike Davis to win this fight by decision. Next, we have a fight between Josiane Nunes and Chelsea Chandler. This is strange. Chelsea Chandler is going to be towering over her. First of all, she looks like Chiasson in here. So it's Josie versus the bad guy here, and honestly, I like the size advantage for Chelsea Chandler quite a bit. Josiane has been beating the worst fighters in the division. Romana Pascal might be the worst fighter to come into the UFC. And even in that fight, she found herself on her back, taken down by Romana Pascal multiple times. But we also saw Chelsea Chandler struggle against Norma Dumont, where she got hit with a big shot and then started sprinting in the opposite direction. Crazy stuff. And Josiane Nunes does dig her heels in and lands heavy shots, and she's also got a reach that is similar to Chelsea Chandler. So if Chelsea Chandler, being 6 inches taller, plays tall guy defense at all, and Josiane Nunes comes over the top with one of those overhands, I think that she could really put her out. I like the experience edge for Josiane Nunes, and I know that Chelsea Chandler is becoming a more and more popular pick publicly just because I have access to the internet. But based on what she looked like striking against Norma Dumont, I think that Josiane Nunes probably cracks her here. I don't want to overvalue the win over Julia Stoliarenko, and if you guys have watched this channel for a while, you know I'm a Julia Stoliarenko believer. But I also know that when she doesn't win, it looks really bad. So I don't want to overvalue the win over Stoliarenko. I'm looking more so at the fight against Norma Dumont, and it was just not a good showing at all. She was pretty inaccurate, and the thing about Josiane Nunes that is a change of pace from Norma Dumont. Yeah, she doesn't match up physically the same way, but the output from Josie is ridiculous. And if Chelsea Chandler starts slowing down because she's eating a lot of big shots, maybe bleeding from her nose, making it harder for her to breathe, I think that's when Nunes can start taking over. I'm taking Josiane Nunes to get it done, showing off that big power and picking up a finish sometime in the late 2nd round or in the 3rd round. Give me Josiane Nunes to win this fight by knockout. Next, we're looking at a fight with Ode Osbourne and Jafel Filho. We all remember when Filho almost ended Muhammad Makayev's career when he made his UFC debut. Crazy deep knee bar that would have finished anybody else on the roster. Muhammad Makayev, however, is the truth, was able to get back in that fight and win that fight. Now, we saw Jafel Filho pick up his first UFC win last time out against Daniel Barez. Barez has serious power. He dropped Filho twice with body shots, hard punches to the body, hard kicks to the body. He was even landing ground ground and pound once he got the fight to the ground, but then he let him up. And it's funny because Barberena was having a lot of success with his hands. He was chewing up that lead leg. He was landing hard kicks to the body. He looked like he had Jafel Filho dead to rights, so letting him up seemed like the right move. But then you see Jafel Filho hit a switch, something you can't teach, something you can't coach. Despite getting torched early on, he decides to be the one moving forward. He lets his hands go. He starts throwing the same things that Barberena is throwing. He's throwing hooks to the body, hooks upstairs, moving forward, walking him down. Gives him a taste of his own medicine, and that completely changed the momentum of the fight. He gets a takedown because he's got Barberena hurt. Then he makes it look easy on the mat. He passes his guard like it's nothing. He gets to the mount, instantly slaps on an arm triangle, just gritty stuff from the Brazilian. We saw Barberena tap immediately. And that to me makes the biggest difference in this fight, because Osbourne has great skills, great size, great speed, but he's not somebody who's going to fight well from behind. He lost the third round to CJ Vergara. He lost the third round in a lot of people's eyes to Charles Johnson, who was completely gassed. And Osbourne has been finished in all of his UFC losses. He's not somebody that can pull it out of the fire when it calls for it, but Jafel Filho is. I give Filho the edge in grappling, of course. He's got that powerful squeeze. He can jump guillotine here. We saw Osbourne lose that way against Brian Kelleher. On the feet, I think Osbourne lands really good shots with his long attacks, but Filho is going to be able to crash the pocket, close the distance, land heavy strikes of his own. Give me the heart. Give me the power. Give me the grappling from Filho. He's just going to overwhelm him and say, I want it more than you. Jafel Filho wins this fight, and it will be inside the distance. Next, we have a fight where a very short notice Mitch Ramirez is stepping in to fight Thiago Moisés. If you watched Dana White's Contender Series, you saw Mitch Ramirez fight Carlos Preux about 6 months ago. He got picked apart. No shame in that. Preux is a sniper. You can just ask my older brother, Trevin. But he got back to his winning ways, picking up a first-round knockout in LFA. Now he gets the call to the big show to fight Thiago Moisés, who is world's better on the mat. Moisés has elite jiu-jitsu, elite MMA jiu-jitsu at that. He could take your back standing. He could choke you out that way. He's been forged in the fire of the UFC as well. 11 fights into his UFC career. He's faced top guys, tough veterans, hyped prospects. He's seen it all. Again, he's a big favorite here, and it's hard not to like him considering the level of competition. He's coming in on a full camp, massive grappling advantage here, fighting out of a world-class gym. All signs point to Thiago Moisés by submission, but at range, he doesn't have anything for Mitch Ramirez. Moisés only has 3 knockout wins in 24 fights. He hasn't knocked anyone out in the UFC. To find his last knockout win, you have to go all the way back to 2018 on his Contender Series fight, where he beat a guy who was awful, finished his career 7-5. Thiago Moisés has never dropped anybody in the UFC. He's pretty low output, and he packed it in last time out against Benoit Saint-Denis. Spent north of 90 seconds toward the end of the second round shelling up, waiting for the fight to be over, waiting for the ref to step in. And now he has to deal with a big, powerful, hungry Mitch Ramirez, who's looking to walk him down and get him out of there. And Moisés will accept fighting off of the back foot, and I could see Ramirez making him pay for that. We saw Moisés get walked down by Michael Johnson, Benoit Saint-Denis. If Mitch Ramirez can keep his feet here, I think that he puts Thiago Moisés out. The line is way too wide. I think there's tons of value on the underdog because I think he's got better size, he's got better power. Short notice debut means nothing. This guy takes fights on short notice. So give me Mitch Ramirez to win this fight by knockout. Huge upset this week. Next, we're looking at possible fight of the night between Josh Culibao and Daniel Silva. Josh Culibao is somebody who's going to stand his ground, let his hands go. He's got good long techniques as well, good long straight punches, good long leg kicks that he can throw out there, and Danny Silva is game. He's going to stand right in front of him and let his hands go as well. I think we have very similar skill sets on both sides. Now, if Culibao wants to grapple, I think he'll have the edge there, and we've seen Culibao lean on that grappling to win fights, even fights that he was losing, like that Meerschaert Bagdasaryan fight. He's getting chewed up as soon as Meerschaert Bagdasaryan showed him his back. Over. I like that he's got that grittiness. I like that he's got that grappling in his back pocket, and he's faced way higher level competition like Bagdasaryan. He was in there with Sun Woo Choi, he was in there with Lerone Murphy, and even against Sun Woo Choi, he was piecing him up. And I think he could do the same thing against Danny Silva here, who is built for war. I like me some Danny Silva if you watch him on Contender Series, but I think that Josh Culibao is going to be able to beat him on the numbers. He's going to be able to maintain the range a little bit better. I think his kicks might be slightly better, and if he leans to lean on his grappling, he can do that. The only way I see Danny Silva winning this fight is if he's able to hurt Culibao with something big, do it early, and then just kind of get out in front from there. But Culibao's got a good chin on him. I don't think he's going to let that happen. So give me the veteran. Give me Josh Culibao to win this fight. I believe it'll be by decision. Next, I have a fight between Jacqueline Amorim and Corey McKenna. Very tough. I'm torn here. I've been going back and forth on this one because you have grittiness coming from Corey McKenna, and I think grittiness is the kryptonite for somebody like Jacqueline Amorim, who's got very powerful strikes and obviously world-class jiu-jitsu, but can burn hot and fade fast. We saw that against Sam Hughes, and she also was not able to finish Sam Hughes when she had the choke basically all but sunk in. Sam Hughes was able to gut it out multiple times, and then after round 1, Jacqueline Amorim had nothing for her. She beat Montserrat Conejo, but Montserrat Conejo probably doesn't belong in the UFC. Corey McKenna, only at 24 years old, has had wins at the UFC, is learning quickly, and somebody who's actually gone to war. I think the fight really comes down to if Corey McKenna can stay safe on the ground in the opening frame, because if she can and she gets this into the second round, that's when she can start to take over. I think if Corey McKenna can make it a dirty fight, make it a gritty fight, make it a dog fight, that's where she's going to pull away, and that's kind of what I expect from this one. If you're looking for a bet, you might as well just go Jacqueline Amorim decision no bet, because I don't see Corey McKenna finishing her. I think that Jacqueline Amorim will hang around even if she's gassed out, but Corey McKenna will do a better job of winning the minutes in this fight, as a result winning the round. So give me the fighter who I think is more battle tested, has a little bit more heart, and is going to give you more in rounds 2 and 3. Really fight for your money more so. So give me Corey McKenna to win this fight by decision. And finally, we have Chad Anheliger welcoming Karlampos Gigoriou to the UFC. Chad Anheliger, a lot older. He's going to be at a size disadvantage only slightly, but I think he has a much more well-rounded skill set. He's got funky footwork, decent power in his hands. He can lean on his wrestling as well. We got Gigoriou, who's on the other side, just a big, powerful striker. We've seen Chad Anheliger have success in the UFC, even in fights that he lost, like against Jose Johnson. He did a good job of getting the fight to the ground when he wanted it there, but clearly he struggled with the length of Jose Johnson, who is just massive for the division. Gigoriou doesn't bring that same issue. He doesn't bring that same length, that same range, that same problem on the mat. What Gigoriou does bring, though, is power in both of his hands. We saw that in his fight on Contender Series. Now, the guy that he was fighting on Contender Series just kind of stood right in front of him. One of the things that I like about Chad Anheliger is that he does have good footwork, and he doesn't stand right in front of guys. He might dart in to land strikes of his own, but he's going to give you weird looks. And making your UFC debut against a guy with an awkward style who's going to make you work, who has been in there with fighters that are probably better than Gigoriou, like Jose Johnson, some guy who's going to take you down, he's going to extend you into the second and third round. We could just see a gritty veteran performance here against the guy who's going to come in hoping to blow the doors off of this guy. He's like, oh, I just knocked out this guy in Contender Series, let me follow that up with another knockout. He's used to getting guys out of there. He's riding a 4-fight finishing streak, but the guys that he's beating are super low level. This is a big step up in competition against an awkward guy, a tough guy, a guy who's going to give you looks that you've never seen before. I think it's a big learning experience for Gigoriou, who could have success later in the UFC, but I think that Chad Anheliger gives him a lot of trouble this week. So give me the Canadian, the monster, the experience. Give me Chad Anheliger to win this fight by decision. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I'll see you later in the week for final picks. Let's go.